Sudan's transition to democracy is facing some of its toughest challenges yet. Officials say soldiers still loyal to former autocratic President Omar al-Bashir tried to overthrow the transitional government last week. And now the military officers and civilians that make up that government are openly clashing over its direction. As Sudanese returned to the streets in protest, those now living in Australia shared their fears for a very uncertain future.
Horns blazing in Khartoum. To those who seek to derail the country's transition to democracy, Sudanese chant freedom.
جايين من أجل حكومة مدنية كاملة، جايين من أجل الوفاء لدماء الشهداء، جايين عشان نقول لحكومتنا المدنية شد حيلك وأبقي قدر الثورة.
But that revolution now looking more fragile than ever. Soldiers reportedly still loyal to the ousted president tried to stage a coup last week, and while they didn't succeed, the cracks are now clear to see. Half a world away in Sydney, Sudanese are watching with bated breath.
There is a lot of concern among the community here. Things may go back to where they were before. People were suppressed. There was no freedom whatsoever. Many people were sent to jail and pushed to go to exile. The regime were torturing people and committing genocides.
After months of widespread protests, a military coup unseated former President Omar al-Bashir in April 2019, 30 years after he rose to power in a coup of his own. A transitional government made up of both civilians and military personnel was installed. Its task, returning the country to full civilian rule ahead of elections in 2024. But tensions between the military and the civilians have been overshadowing that transition ever since it began.
So those tensions, which had been bubbling along during these 2 years of the transitional government, have rather come out into the open as a result of this coup. The military broadly, because they've held power for so long, have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo.
And tensions are still rising. After this latest coup attempt, the military withdrew its protection of the civilians overseeing the democratic transition. But they say they won't be discouraged.
We will defend the government, our people and the democratic transition to the last drop of blood. And if there is any threat to the democratic transition, we will fill the streets.
The heightened rhetoric only heightening concern for Sudanese in Australia.
On a daily basis, we are contacting our friends, families. Some of them are even worried for their lives because if the Islamists and the terrorist group in Sudan came back to power again.
But despite these recent setbacks, analysts are confident the transition can succeed.
So there are, grassroots signs of success. And frankly, I think that itself worries those who have been against the revolution, against the transition, because they've seen perhaps that this thing is actually getting some momentum.
Amidst all the uncertainty, one thing is clear. Popular support for this movement is not waning. Claudia Farhat, SBS World News.